Is a former five-star ready to bust out? It's another edition of Locked On LSU. Let's get it.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thrilled to have you aboard with us here. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. We are free wherever you get podcasts and available on YouTube as well. Presented today by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com. The final 500 draft prospects. The list is out, courtesy of Baseball America, and boy, is it glowing about your Fighting Tigers of LSU. On this episode, you will hear from a defensive line commit, Zion Williams, who gushes about LSU defensive coordinator Bo Davis. But I want to begin with a former five-star in Da'Shawn Womack, a guy we've talked about here. And let's be very, very honest. This is an LSU team that we have all said all season long and all off season long, everything or anything they might be this year is contingent upon how much better that defense can be. Okay, they don't have to be the best ever. They just have to not be the worst ever like they were a year ago. And so this is the time of year where you see all the lists and the projections and the rankings and the hot seats and all that sort of stuff. And quite honestly, I love that Media Days is next week, because Media Days, we actually get to talk to coaches and players. Then after that, you're about a week away from camp beginning, and you actually get to talk about what you see on the field. So it's here. Talking season is just about over. But there's been a lot of hype this offseason for Da'Shawn Womack. And, of course, Da'Shawn Womack was a five-star member of the LSU 2023 signing class, and he's entering his sophomore year. And in limited reps a year ago, Da'Shawn Womack had 13 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 fumble recovery in a dozen games. And when I talk about Da'Shawn Womack, there's always one thing above all the others that stands out in my mind. I remember, and Brian Kelly's been great to the media as far as access. Like, we actually get to go watch practice, not just 10 minutes of stretching, but he'll let us watch scrimmages and full periods and all kind of stuff. And one of the first days of fall camp last year, the offensive line was working on double team drills. So it was 2 offensive linemen against a defensive lineman, and the defensive lineman had to split the double team. And Da'Shawn Womack was going up against 2 offensive linemen, backups, about his age. And he was ragdolled. And at that moment, I knew that's not a guy that's ready to be a 3-down defensive end in the SEC, because he can't help you against the run. So he was basically a pass rush specialist as a freshman. And he'll continue to grow and get bigger and is eventually going to be awesome. And I think could, this year for LSU, be awesome if the reps were there. Here's the problem. I don't think the reps are there at defensive end. And I say all of this because ESPN put out one sleeper for every preseason top 25 team. And they listed Da'Shawn Womack from LSU. And that may be the case, but the real problem is Savion Jones, Paris Shan, Braden Swinson. You got 3 veteran guys right there that are all talented, experienced players. And honestly, as many questions as we have about LSU's defense, the one place where I look and go, I think they're good, it's at defensive end. I mean, Savion Jones, Braden Swinson was your best pass rusher a year ago outside Harold Perkins, who was more that nickel Sam role. But I mean, as far as your defensive lineman, Paris Shan has shown that he can play edge, he can move inside and be an interior pass rush guy for you as well. Those 3 guys are set. And then there's Womack. And to be honest, man, the freshmen are really impressive. Kalaj Cobbins was fantastic in spring. I mean, we saw him win reps against first and second teamers in spring. So the future there is very good as well. I just don't know how many reps are going to be there for Da'Shawn Womack. So if I'm actually looking at a sleeper or breakout candidate defensively for LSU, it has to be at cornerback, doesn't it? Doesn't it? If you disagree, let me know, but it's got to be cornerback. Because I even think the rest of the defense, you kind of feel like you're waiting to see who's going to be more productive, but you feel like you know who's going to be there. Like, it's safety, you're going to have Jordan Gilbert and Sage Ryan at safety. Major Burns is going to play that star role. You know, Harold Perkins, Greg Penn are at linebacker with West and Whit Weeks backing him up. Like, you know what you got. And defensive tackle is a bit of a mystery, but you got a lot of numbers there, and we'll see who emerges. And I just talked about defensive end. The question is cornerback. Look, a year ago, Zy Alexander was your best corner. 44 tackles, 2 interceptions, 7 pass breakups, and he didn't even play in November. Remember, he tore his ACL on the final play of the game against Army. He didn't play the rest of the season. After that, Javen Toviano had no interceptions and 1 pass breakup. Ashton Sams had no interceptions and 2 pass breakups. That's it. All the other cornerbacks that played a year ago, LaTerrence Welch, gone. Denver Harris, gone. Deuce Chestnut, gone. Jeremiah Hughes, gone. Let's even assume Zy Alexander, who didn't practice in the spring, is back 100% healthy, ready to roll at peak form like last year, and is one starting cornerback. Who's the other guy? I mean, Jair Brown in 2 years at Ohio State, in 2 years combined, started 1 time, played in 14 total games in 2 years, played in 14 games with 1 start in 2 years. J.K. Johnson, who transferred in a year ago, redshirted in 2021, played in 12 games in 2022, but then last year, in his first season at LSU, injury and fall camp missed the whole season. P.J. Woodland, we saw take reps with the ones in spring, but that's a true freshman. And in part, he was taking reps because there were reps to be had because you had injuries and guys that weren't available. So if you're looking for a sleeper, if you're looking for a breakout candidate, like, I feel like I pretty much know who's going to play where on LSU's defense, except cornerback. And somebody has to start, and somebody has to be serviceable. So I am very excited about what Da'Shawn Womack's future is going to be at LSU. He is an athletic kid. He is freakish, and I think he's going to be really, really good coming off the edge, especially as he gets bigger. But there's just not starter reps at that position this year for LSU. And I would say the same at linebacker and at safety. The gigantic question mark, obviously, is at cornerback for LSU. Somebody's going to win that job, and whoever that is, I'm guessing when the season's over and we're sitting here talking about a recap and who was the players that actually broke out for the Tigers, my guess is it's going to be whoever wins that job, likely opposite Zy Alexander, provided he's healthy. We're counting down to it, man. Monday, LSU will take its turn at SEC Football Media Days. I'll be there in Dallas. We'll get to talk to Brian Kelly, Garrett Nussmeier, Mason Taylor, Harold Perkins. Excited for all of it. And we'll have plenty of recap for you here on Locked on LSU. So make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast app. And if you're there on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Okay. From the present to the future, I had an opportunity to interview one-on-one LSU defensive tackle commit Zion Williams. And man, did he say a lot. But there's 2 things you're going to hear when we come back, including the reason, singular, the one reason why Zion Williams is an LSU Tiger. You're going to hear that next on Locked on LSU, your team every day. Proud to tell you today on this episode of Locked on LSU that we're brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That, my friends, is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. So I had a chance to visit with LSU defensive tackle commit Zion Williams. And if you're not familiar, Zion Williams is out of Lufkin, Texas. If you go check out his On3 profile, Zion Williams out of Lufkin is listed at 6'3.5", 330. Well, Zion Williams corrected that because I asked him point blank on air. He said he's 6'5", 330. Said he would actually like to lose a little weight, but can't. And I kind of get it. When you've gone from 6'3" to 6'5" in less than a year and you keep growing, it's hard to lose weight even at that size. We'll see eventually where he levels off. But I'll tell you this. This coming fall will be my 18th season covering LSU football. And over the years, I've had a chance to talk to dozens, if not hundreds, of high school commits in a variety of sports that are committed to LSU and other places. And it's rare that you get someone that stands out because, to be very honest, at 16, 17, 18 years old, you're not polished, and doing interviews live on the radio or TV, it is rather uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable for a lot of adults. And so the ones that are really good stand out. Like Russell Shepard was absolutely magnificent. Miles Brennan was someone who, if he wanted to do media at 17 years old, certainly could have done it. Colin Hurley, current freshman LSU quarterback. Like, those are three that absolutely have stood out over all the years I've done this. And you might be able to add Zion Williams to that list. And I'm not sitting here telling you that because you're a great interview, it's going to mean you're a great player. Obviously, Russell Shepard didn't pan out as a quarterback. Miles Brennan was injured for much of his career, as we know. And Colin Hurley's just getting started. But he's a guy that is engaging and fun. And I'm telling you, LSU fans are going to love him. And you're also going to love what Zion Williams had to say. Keep in mind, this is a guy out of Lufkin, Texas. He had offers from Texas and Texas A&M and Alabama and everybody, y'all. Big 4-star interior defensive lineman, the 20th best defensive lineman in the entire country. And he picked LSU. And I asked Zion Williams point blank, why? What was the deciding factor that made you pick LSU? Give a listen.
Honestly and wholeheartedly, it was Coach Bo. The first time I met Coach Bo, it was just like I need to play for this guy. It was a weird feeling, but he reminded me a little too much of one of the coaches that I have at home. And me and that coach have like one of the greatest relationships I've ever built with the coach. And it just feels like I'll have that same relationship with Coach Bo. So ultimately, he was my deciding factor.
If Bo Davis had stayed at Texas, do you think you'd be committed to Texas right now?
Honestly, yeah. With the way these like schools are for me, it feels like I can genuinely see myself go play at any school. But what, like I said earlier, this like helped me decide that was who was at the school, and Coach Bo was. He was that deciding factor. He was insane.
Do you want to know why I was on board with paying the defensive line coach $1.5 million a year? That's why. Because not only is Bo Davis arguably the best technical defensive line coach. Remember, Bo Davis was recruited by and played for Pete Jenkins and then coached under and with and has been mentored by Pete Jenkins, who's roundly and widely considered the greatest defensive line coach ever. Yes, he's technically in that conversation of the best defensive line coaches in college football. That alone will get more productivity out of the talent you have right now. But listen to what you don't need me to tell you how good of a recruiter he is. Listen to what Zion Williams said, a kid from Lufkin who had offers from Texas and Texas A&M, and everybody could have gone anywhere and picked LSU because of Bo Davis. That's why, if you're wondering, look, LSU has not had a first-round draft pick at defensive tackle since Michael Brockers in the 2012 draft. It has been a dozen years since LSU's had a first-round defensive tackle in the draft. Bo Davis just had one in year 3 at Texas, by the way. So to get that defensive line back to where we all expect it to be, you got to get talent on campus and you got to coach it up. Look, Mason Smith was a 5-star. He's the number 1 defensive tackle in the country. And he had 5 defensive line coaches during his 3 years in Baton Rouge. That's a problem. It's one of the reasons why the productivity was never there. Bo Davis trying to change that. That was one thing that stood out. I also asked Zion Williams, and by the way, this interview was on my radio show. If you're not familiar, I host a daily radio show called After Further Review on ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge, syndicated in New Orleans, Alexandria, Lafayette, Lake Charles. So thrilled to be able to do that every single day. And this was a one-on-one I had with Zion Williams. If you want to catch the full interview, you can here on YouTube, podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search After Further Review. But I also asked Zion Williams at this point, a guy entering his senior year in high school, who's 6'5", 330, a top 20 player at his position in the country, who's committed to LSU and had offers from everyone. Like, what do you feel like you still had to work on? And I thought this self-evaluation was really interesting.
My hands, my pass rushing skills, like, for sure. Like, okay, the pass rushing can be worked on, but my pass rushing and change of direction, those are like my weakest skills. Like I've spent hours with one of my coaches trying to fix it, and it gets a little better, but only a little. Like, and then I'll plateau for a while, and then a little better, plateau, and I'm like really trying to figure out what can I do to better my pass rushing and change of direction, because that is my weakest skill I have in my bag.
Zion Williams, pretty candid there in the reflection. By the way, one other thing, I tell you, it was fun and engaging interview. I asked Zion Williams who he models his game after. Like, is there a comp? Is there someone he likes to watch and sort of take technique from? And he said, actually, he doesn't watch football. He says he'll watch the Super Bowl. That's it. The only other football he watches is game film when he's scouting opponents or watching himself play. He said, why would I want to watch other people do the thing that I do? So he is a rare type of cat, not only because at 17 years old, he's 6'5", 330 and a freak athlete, but his personality, the way he carries himself, and I think he's going to be a fan favorite around LSU once he gets to campus. Okay. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. Might I suggest your second listen be Locked on SEC? Go catch my guy Chris Gordy as we're counting down to SEC Media Days next week. It'd be a great opportunity to subscribe to Locked on SEC, because Gordy will have everything covered all 4 days in Dallas at SEC Football Media Days on Locked on SEC. So make sure you subscribe, podcast or YouTube, to Locked on SEC. Okay. The MLB Draft opens on Sunday. Baseball America's final draft prospect ranking. The top 500 prospects, the final rankings are in. What do they say about LSU's current roster and its signees? We're talking about that to wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. LSU had 13 players drafted a year ago. That was the third most all time. And they're going to challenge that number here again this year. In the final version of Baseball America's top 500 draft prospects, LSU had the most players on the list with 11. Not only was the 11 that LSU had the most on the list, it was by far the most. South Carolina and Vanderbilt followed with 8 apiece. There were 3 teams that had 7. Bama, Tennessee, Wake Forest. And then there were 6 schools that all had 6 prospects on the list. Keep in mind, this is out of the top 500. Arkansas, Duke, Florida, Mississippi State, Oklahoma State, and Oregon State all had 6. LSU had 11, nearly double that number. I think there's a couple of ways you could look at this. First of all, it's certainly validating of the job Jay Johnson does acquiring talent, be it out of the freshman class, out of the transfer portal. We look at LSU's team and we say, man, this is a talented group of people. And it makes sense because they are. The scouts are validating that. Portal rankings are validating. Yes, you're talented. You're as talented or more talented than anyone. Now, the flip side of that is it's fair to say when you have more players in the top 500 than any other school, and you were 3-12 in the SEC at one point, and you had to travel for a regional where you got bounced, I think it's fair to say you probably should have done more with this group of talent. But you look at that list: Jump, Holman, Hurd, Herring, Ulloa, Lohr, White, Jones, Braswell, 11 in all. 11 players, draftable prospects, more than any other school in college baseball. Now, the other interesting part of this as well from Baseball America is they also listed the schools with the most high school commits that are in the top 500 prospects. And yet again, LSU at the top of the list, although they shared the top spot with Tennessee. LSU and Tennessee each had 13. Auburn, Miami, Ole Miss, Texas, each with 9. Virginia with 8. Florida, South Carolina, Texas A&M with 7. Arkansas, Georgia, Georgia Tech, and TCU with 6. So the point is, Jay Johnson and Tony Vitello have the reputation as the greatest recruiters in college baseball, and this is validating. Each of them have 13 prospects, high school commits, in the Baseball America top 500 for this upcoming draft. Again, LSU and Tennessee at 13. Next school has 9. LSU, among its current players, 11. Next schools have 8. So Jay Johnson, the point I would leave you with as it relates to this conversation is, if you're wondering about culture, if you're wondering about Jay Johnson's ability to recruit, if you're wondering about NIL and all that stuff, don't. LSU's got the number 1 portal class in America right now. They're either the number 1 or number 2 high school signing class in America. They're about to pump more guys into this MLB draft than any other school in America right now. LSU got a little sideways this year. They lost their way and lost who they were coming off a national championship year. They tried to play a lot of young, talented guys. They really were trying to find their sea legs like a baby giraffe stumbling around for the first half of the season. And once they found out who they were, they got on fire and they started rolling, got themselves into the postseason, and had themselves 2 outs away from hosting a super regional against West Virginia, meaning LSU would have been right back in Omaha where they were a year ago. And when you look at the roster that Jay Johnson's put together here in the transfer portal and the freshmen coming in, that number 1 or number 2 freshman signing class, it's easy to see why the expectation is that LSU will be right back in Omaha again next year, competing for a national championship again. And quite honestly, that's going to be the expectation every year Jay Johnson is here, because no matter who you lose, like on a year where you have 13 players drafted, third most ever, you come back the following season and you weren't gutted with talent. You have more talent in this year's draft than anybody else. Now the key is to maximize it from February to June and hoist that trophy and win the final game again. Next year, by the way, we learned LSU in February 28th to March 2nd, is going to play in the Frisco College Baseball Classic. So remember, this past year, LSU played the Minute Maid Classic. 2 years ago, the national championship year, they played in Round Rock, where they played Kansas State, Iowa, and Sam Houston. This coming year, LSU will play up in Frisco in the Frisco College Classic. In Nebraska, K-State, Sam Houston, also in that series. I am always okay with LSU going on the road in the pre-conference. If you follow my content for any length of time, you know how I feel about non-conference and midweek games. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't. Yeah, you want to win and all that sort of stuff, but when it comes to what your goals are going to be, which are hosting a regional, being a national seed, hosting a super regional, getting to Omaha, that is all going to depend on what you do in conference play. If you win every non-conference game, but you go 14-16 in the league, you're not hosting. You're not. If you go winless in the pre-conference and then go 22-8 in SEC play, you're a national seed. It's that easy. So use the pre-conference to get ready for conference play, which is why I like watching LSU travel, seeing LSU travel. Get away from Alec Box Stadium. Go get on a bus, stay in a hotel, sit in somebody else's dugout, stand on someone else's mound, stand in someone else's batter's box, look at a different batter's eye, different sight lines, have something other than 10,000 fans cheering for you like you do at the box. Get out of your comfort zone, because guess what? That's what it's like for 15 road games in the Southeastern Conference and then in Omaha. So get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, as one LSU administrator told me years ago after LSU built the new box, which I think they had a price tag of about $38 million, this administrator told me that $38 million stadium don't pay for itself with the lights off, meaning you got to have home games. You got to have home games for ticket sales and concession and parking and all that sort of stuff as a revenue generator. And I do understand the economics of it, but I'm not an athletic administrator. I don't have to worry about balancing a budget. I'm just worried about LSU winning more championships, and getting on the road in the pre-conference is a good way to do that as a tune-up for SEC play. So the Tigers will be in Round Rock February 28th through March 2nd, 2025. Okay, that'll do it for us here on this Friday edition of Locked On LSU. We're so thrilled to have you with us. Thank you for being here. And if you're hanging out on YouTube, remember, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for being here on podcast. Please subscribe. YouTube, subscribe, smash that like button, hit the bell so you're notified whenever a video posts. And until next time, we'll see you. It's Locked On LSU, your team every day.